Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Unleash the Psychic Goddess Within, How to Awaken to Your Own Unique Gifts and Have an Extraordinary Life. I'm your host, Susan Ortolano, psychic, spiritual life coach, medical intuitive from SusanOrtolano.com. And today we have a guest who's here to bring a bit of science for us as we discuss the physics of astrology and how that really plays into awakening psychic energy. Today's guest is here to help those of you understand astrology and how it is science-based. We're also going to look at how astrology is a science-based tool that can help you open up your own psychic gifts. So I'm excited to share a little bit about our guest today. Our guest today is an expert astrologer, a psychic, a writer, and a speaker with a very scientific background. She's been studying and practicing astrology for over 30 years. Her psychic ability includes, but is not limited to, predictive dreams, lucid dreaming, clairvoyance, clairsentience. She's a former nuclear physicist from Russia. She's applied her knowledge of physics to her work with astrology and to the psychic realm. She's a member of the Organization for Professional Astrology, as well as an Agent 777 at Cosmic Intelligence Agency, or CIA, and it's not the CIA you're all thinking of. It is Cosmic Intelligence Agency. So I'm thrilled to have with us here a woman who has an incredible knowledge of astrology, an incredible knowledge of science. Nadia Smirnova-Mierau, welcome to our series.
Thank you, Susan, for the great introduction, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. I'm very happy and excited to share my knowledge and my understanding of this matter with all of you.
I always tell everybody who's listening to get a pen and paper to take notes. It's really important to do that today, not that it's not important on other days, but today we're going to be talking about a lot of science, and I know so many people think of astrology and psychic energy as, you know, foo-foo, fluffy, nonsense, and Nadia is really here to talk about the concrete scientific point of view. I know astrology is one of my favorite topics, so I'm really excited to dive in. So Nadia, I would love to start by having you share more of your journey, how you got into astrology and psychic phenomena.
I was born in Russia, and in my teens, I have discovered that I have certain dreams, lucid dreams and predictive dreams that come true. And I didn't know much at the time how it all works, but I was very inquisitive. I was very good at math and physics and analyzing the reality, so I quickly learned a few things here and there. And right there in my teens, I started getting interested in astrology because I had that sense, that feeling that astrology will give me answers. And right after I finished high school, I entered into Moscow University and physics department and started studying nuclear physics. And during that time, I already was studying astrology seriously, and somewhere in my early 20s, I started doing professional readings. Somewhere in there, I have met a young gentleman who was a professional psychic at the time in Russia, and he was working for a business, for a company, doing psychic counseling to his boss. And I was very much impressed with that. And his wife at the time was also in Moscow University. That's how we met, through through friends. And we asked him, me and my other friends who were physicists/astrologers, we all were studying astrology, we asked him for live psychic readings for us as friends. And he gave us a lot of insight and readings that were true and impressed us deeply. So I asked him in turn if I could create his natal chart and see which of the planets are responsible for this amazing gift that he has.
Oh.
And I did that, and I discovered that he has a beautiful trine between the Neptune sitting in Scorpio and his Venus sitting in Pisces. And at that point, I already knew that Pisces sign is one of the most psychic signs in the entire horoscope, an entire zodiac circle, and that if people have prominent Pisces in their charts, they tend to be more sensitive, more psychically in tuned. And Neptune is the planet that rules Pisces in astrology. So prominent position of Neptune or strong position or strong alignment with some other planet gives additional sort of support to that psychic phenomenon. And I realized that he's an Aries like myself, and he has a Venus in Pisces like myself, and he has a Neptune trine that Venus just like I do. Mm-hmm. On top of that, I realized that I have several other planets sitting in Pisces, and then Neptune is trining all of those planets. So I realized that I can do what he does based on my astrological discovery. Mm-hmm. And I could do that maybe even to a greater extent because I have more planets clustering in Pisces. And that thought propelled me to try and conduct my own scientific experiment on myself and to see if I can train myself to do what he does. And what I did is I found some friends who were willing to collaborate and get me trained, and I asked them, give me specifically, I decided to use techniques that he used. Mm-hmm. What he did was he was able to look at photos of people, and he was able to say things that he wouldn't have known otherwise. Like, for example, he was able to say things into the past and into the future just looking at a photograph of a person that he doesn't know. Mm-hmm. And as well as he could look at the person who is walking into the room and say something. I'll give you an example. Our friend walked in the middle of us playing with these readings, and that friend walked in, said hi, and walked out. This psychic gentleman turned to us and he said, this friend will eventually end up in prison. Wow. And we didn't believe that. We couldn't believe that. And it's only 10 years after that I heard the story that friend got actually in prison for whatever reason and spent like a couple of years there. Wow. So that was 10 years into the future that he predicted that. And so he also made a few, not predictions, but readings into the past that gave us a confirmation that he sees things that nobody else can see and he wouldn't otherwise have known. Right. To this day, I remember his predictions. To make this long story short, I asked my friends to give me photos of people that they know and I don't know, and I would try and imitate this gentleman and tune in with my psychic powers that I discovered I have, tune in and say something that I strongly feel about these people, and then my friends would have to either confirm or otherwise say that this is incorrect. So, and I did that with several friends, and to my own amazement, this worked, and I started realizing that there are certain things, certain information I can pick up from these photos that I would know, and I'll give you an example. One friend gave me a photo of her entire family, and I started picking up some stuff from each member of the family, something that came to mind, and I had this strong discerning feeling. Yeah. This is the actual truth. I might not know the details, but I feel that this is the truth, what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I'll give an example. One of the family members had, in my psychic vision, had a black hole. It was a woman, kind of black hole in her stomach area, which I described. I see a black hole in the stomach area. I can't really describe what it is, but something is not right in there. It turned out she had all of her female organs surgically removed due to a disease. So then with another friend, she showed me a photograph of a man, older, elderly man and a woman, and I was able to instantly say that the man is dead and the woman is still alive, and that was correct. And for another woman also, I was able to say that she is dead, and then I also was able to see her entire family dynamic. And I said she is dead, she died in a hospital from being sick. She has a son and a daughter, older daughter, younger son, and she had a husband who is an alcoholic. So I was able to pick that all up just from a photo. Once I discovered this ability that I had, I decided to put it to good use, and I started combining astrology readings with psychic readings for my clients at the time in Russia, and that was in my mid-20s. Wow. And that worked really well. I was able to help quite a few people with combined predictions. And astrology predictions, they're a little more scientific, mathematical, and there's certain techniques we use to predict certain things. And at that time, I felt astrology is really good to predict timing of the events.
Mm-hmm.
However, what exactly is happening was difficult to predict astrologically. And that I was substituting with my psychic sense, because psychically is I figured that psychically sometimes it's very hard to predict the timing. The timing is, I was able to ballpark with the psychic sense. And astrology was supplementing with the timing, which was beautiful. So I'll give you an example of ballparking timing with my psychic vision. Mm-hmm. I had a client whose husband was missing, and I did an astrology reading and a psychic reading for her. So from astrology reading, I told her I could not see him coming back within several months ahead that she was asking. I could not see it. We were only looking into like 3 or 4 months ahead. But psychically, I was seeing that he will return at some point within a longer period of time than 6 months. And I couldn't pinpoint exactly when he would return, but I told her the picture that I could see psychically. Psychically, I could see that he will come back like nothing happened and will open a door with his own key that he still has. I also was able psychically to see that he's still alive, that he's in a hospital, and he's outside of perimeters of Moscow at that time. That she should not be looking for him in the hospitals in Moscow. I was able to see that there's nothing bodily wrong with him except for something with his head, which I couldn't really understand what it was. So when he finally returned a year from that point, after a year he returned like nothing happened, opened the door with his key. He then told the story. It turned out that he was visiting his brother in Ukraine and had an episode of amnesia. Yeah. He forgot everything and ended up in a hospital for a year, not remembering who he was, where he came from. And after a year of recovery, he suddenly remembered everything. He still had the key to his apartment. He came back a year later, like nothing happened. The woman was going crazy looking for him until she met me, and I told her that in my psychic vision, he wouldn't want you to spend all your money and time looking for him. He would be happy if you get back to your work so you can maintain the livelihood of your children with him, both of their children. And she thankfully followed my advice. She got back to work. She believed me that he will return. And I told her, you're not going to find him yourself, so let go of looking for him. He will return on his own. Just go back to work and, have a normal life with your children. I had numerous of experiences like that where I combined psychic and astrological readings for people. Meanwhile, I had a lot of skeptics surrounding me who were my colleagues in physics world, my friends from Moscow University, lots of skeptics who were basically friendly ridiculing me and arguing with me and friendly making fun of me for believing in astrology. I decided that since they are my friends, I feel like I owe to them an explanation. And I decided I'm on a mission to discover how I can explain it to them that astrology actually works and it's not a symbolic or occult something, that it actually has a physics behind it. And sure enough, I had an epiphany about 20 years ago, just purely thinking about it and maybe tuning in psychically. I had an epiphany how it all works. The biggest question my friends were asking me, explain to me how this distant Mercury can affect my way of thinking, or why am I being an Aries or Sagittarius being different from someone who is Libra or Virgo.
Now, those are good questions.
Explain to me how how all that works on a physics level. Explain to me, why do you think that the moon affects my sleep or anything. I don't notice anything. That's what they were saying to me. And what's the physical connection, they were asking me. They were saying that I'm my own man, I'm my own woman. I think for myself, I make my own decisions. Nobody makes me make my decision. There is no connection between me and the moon and the Jupiter and planets. So first of all, I decided I'm going to present to them the answer to what is the physical connection of these celestial bodies to us. And one of the things that people take for granted and never realize that it's happening is that we do have an actual physical connection to the celestial bodies. And that physical connection is gravity. So gravity is broadly misunderstood within psychic realm, within physics realm, within common sense realm, and just simply taken for granted. We live on Earth, we walk around, we never think of gravity. We never think of what connects us to Earth. But we all talk about our freedom to do what we want, right? But we don't really have that freedom in the presence of gravity. Like if we suddenly want to jump and fly, we don't have that freedom.
We know where that goes,
freedom.
right?
Right. We don't have that freedom. We are at mercy of the gravity. With that said, once we start looking at the moon, we realize that the moon has a massive gravitational effect onto Earth. And if we zoom out from our personal existence and look at the Earth and the moon from the distance, so to speak, right, we're going to see that the moon and Earth are involved in the mutual gravitational dance. The moon and Earth are both rotating around the common center, and they both distorting each other due to centrifugal forces. So the Earth, and again, we never think of that the moon with its gravity can do something to Earth. We never think of these terms. However, we know that about lunar gravitational effect. We know that because we always hear about tides. If we live by the ocean, we always hear about tidal effect. We have daily tidal effect, we have monthly tidal effect, we have the moon basically going around the Earth is dragging that whole mass of the liquid of the ocean, which Earth consists of most of the liquids. The Earth is essentially liquid. If you think of it, we think of the Earth as a solid rock, but no, most of the Earth are the oceans, and even what we think is hard, which is tectonic plate we're living on, has a liquid underneath of it. So Earth is liquid, and the moon with its massive gravity goes around the Earth. And we're looking at the moon, and it looks small to us, but essentially the moon is very, very big. If you look at the moon and the Earth difference between their sizes, the moon is essentially huge. It's very unnatural for supposedly a natural satellite, very unnaturally huge. And it goes around the Earth, and when they dance around, what happens to the Earth gets distorted due to these centrifugal and gravitational forces. And that distortion creates a tidal bulge going around the Earth. On top of that, people don't typically hear about the solar tides. Some people do hear about lunar tides. And when I start talking about lunar tides with my skeptics physicists, when they ask me, so how does astrology work? The most smart physicists, most inquisitive ones, the minute I mention about lunar tides, they are satisfied, believe it or not. They say, okay, I see your point. I get it now. And I don't have to talk anymore to them. But people who don't know science, there are skeptics who don't know science and not coming from scientific world, so they don't understand how the gravity works. They ask more questions. Therefore, I wrote the entire series of books, which I called Physics of Astrology. And the biggest premise is on how this gravitational force creates a solid connection between the celestial bodies and us. And you don't hear that from mainstream scientists. You're never going to hear them connecting the tidal effect of the moon and the sun and other planets to astrology. Nobody created that connection.
Wow.
So we never hear about solar tides, but the scientists who do work with tides specifically to study the Earth, they all take lunar and solar tides into consideration. Both of these tidal effects exist. And if lunar tides and solar tides exist, so are Jupiter tides and Mercury tides and so forth. Now, the question from people who first hear about tides and understand the tidal effect ask, so what? So what? Yes, okay. We human beings and our brain is liquid. Our brain is 78% of liquids. Even our bones are 22% of liquid. We're technically liquid beings. So therefore, of course, we're going to be experiencing those tidal effects within our brain, within our body. So therefore, we do have those wave signatures. These tides come in waves. The moon goes around creating a circular wave that has a frequency. There's a frequency associated with solar tides and Mercury tides and Jupiter tides, and we resonate with those frequencies. Our entire body vibrates with those frequencies. Now, the frequencies have an interesting dynamic. If you start studying physics of behavior of liquids, you're going to see that when these waves interfere with each other, they could create additional interference patterns and so forth. It becomes complex. And if you look at these waves, the gravity waves, and again, these are not gravity waves that you hear in the media.
Right.
What you hear in the media about, hey, we discovered a gravity wave from such and such distant pulsar or whatever. These are not the same gravity waves. The gravity waves I'm talking about specifically are the waves of gravitational pull, cyclic, constant gravitational pull that has a frequency to it, attached to it, and multiple frequencies. For example, the moon has one of the gravitational frequencies is daily because it goes around us, around the Earth daily.
Yeah,
right?
It goes pretty fast.
Another gravitational frequency, yes, is due to the lunar and solar dynamic, and that frequency is 28 days for the moon specifically.
Right.
So, yes, and so forth. There's multiple frequencies attached to each celestial body motion, and we basically float in these frequencies, in this sea of ripples, so to speak. We float in there, and some of them create resonances. Certain planetary positions, like squares, oppositions, and trines, create certain types of resonating patterns that will resonate with what we have going on in our body and what we have going on from the day of our birth. Then we have to talk, from this point, if you understand the concept of that gravity is that physical phenomena that connects us. It's actually invisible to the eye, but it is a physical connection between us and celestial bodies. If you understand that concept, from this point, we can talk further about how it actually translates into power in our life.
Absolutely.
And I'll give you an example of how full moon and a new moon phenomenon is power in our life. I'm going to give you an example. People have noticed a long time ago that on a full moon, people are out and about, and crazy is getting crazier. And there is a notion in the hospitals that they're busier on a full moon. There's a notion in food industry that they're busy, and restaurant is busier on a full moon. There's also, you can observe there's a lot more accidents on the road during the full moon. On a new moon, typically we notice there's a lot less activity. People tend to feel or complain of being tired. There's a definitely lower count, and yoga studios, there is a fluctuation of yoga groups enrollments or turnouts where they have a full class on a full moon and a lower count of people on a new moon.
Wow.
And that all happens due to the fact that during the new moon, the way that the moon and the sun position, it creates such a gravity force that makes people a little more tired, less likely to do stuff. And if you're interested to know how that works, you can check out my courses. You can read my book where I explain in detail and have a presentation. As a matter of fact, I asked my boyfriend to videotape him to do a physical presentation of how that phenomena works and how it makes you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I present my material, even though it's physics and science, the way I present my material in my video courses or in my books are really very easy to understand and digest for people who can only operate with the right brain, meaning artists, visual people who totally don't have any left brain capacity. And I'm saying it in a respectful way because some people can only feel and see and understand the information that way. They don't understand the numbers or physics terms. I find myself being left and right brain balanced. So therefore, I have this unique opportunity to explain to both right brain and the left brain people what they don't understand on the other side and help them to process it. So my books are designed to appeal and explain this phenomenon to the right brain people, to people who understand and process information with their feelings more than with their left brain. However, the books are also very solid in terms of presenting evidence to the left brain group of people as well. So you can find both of that, and you don't need to be intimidated that it has the word physics or science in there. It's actually very entertaining and very well received by
that's good.
Too.
Well, you have an incredibly, an amazing story, and, certainly so many people who are listening here have had, psychic experiences. Some already know they are. Some know they're empathic. They've had some of the dreams and that kind of stuff. I know for me, I got involved in astrology at a young age. That was one of the first tools that came into my life after having all these bizarre experiences, and it really started to have life make sense. And I know that astrology, a lot of people think, it's your sun sign, and they go read, the newspaper horoscope or that kind of stuff. But you and I know it's so much more than that. And it's like you were talking about, Neptune, planet Neptune, and the different ways that the planets get along with each other, which would be the trine, the square, the sextile, the conjunction. Those are ways the planets interact with each other in a natal chart, or even in a different kind of chart, because there are a lot of different kinds of charts. I would love for you to share a little bit more about how astrology is more than just the sun sign.
Astrology of the sun signs is a very, very, very basic level. And I recommend everybody to start with that before you progress further, because this basic level allows you to at least look at your friends and observe the difference between somebody who is born with the sun in Aries versus somebody who's born with the sun in Gemini. So once you get a taste of it, then you can progress to learn about the actual scientific astrology of the human being. And that starts with casting a chart for the exact moment of the birth. The exact moment of the birth and the place of birth makes that chart unique. There is no astrological twins out there in the entire universe who would be born at the exact time and at exact the same place. The closest that to astrological twins people come to is the actual twins who might be born within several minutes apart. That several minutes apart will create a huge difference in the natal chart. So the natal chart consists of besides the zodiac signs, it has also 12 houses. It has all the planets in our solar system lined up in these houses, in the signs, interacting with each other, creating aspects with each other. And these aspects represent a certain gravitational wave configuration that a person is born with. I get questions why the birth is so important, but I think to explain that, you guys either have to read my books or we have to do it another time. And I invite
right, of course.
you.
Yeah, but it is important because otherwise we can't cast a full chart. We don't get all the information.
One of the things that I feel important for you to know that my discovery and my thoughts of explaining astrology and psychic phenomena from scientific standpoint, from physics standpoint, using traditional and new alternative physics to explain what's happening. So from my discovery, I realized that, yes, every chart, natal chart for each person is absolutely unique. There is no two alike. And each chart potentially can give you all the answers you're seeking about yourself, about your personality, about your looks, about your health, about your relationships with other people, about your children, about your karma, about your past life and future life, about the meaning of your life in this lifetime, and about your social growth and so many other answers, about your money, finances, about your maybe psychological twists that you have going on, dramas in your life. It describes the events. It can predict the events going back into your life and into the future. And it just has so much. It has a lot.
Exactly,
so your sun signs astrology does not do any predictions except it describes similar features of people who are born during, say, the months of Aries or during, the months of Capricorn. So similar features. And these, it's 1/12 of the entire humanity, but miraculously, they all will have certain similar features. And if you start comparing and statistically analyzing people with certain features, you're going to see those similarities.
Right.
Yes, two Capricorns are going to be very different from each other. However, these two Capricorns are going to have similarities versus two other Arises or versus two other Virgos.
Right.
And people who start diving into it, they usually start seeing it right away and get amazed.
Oh yeah, I
highly recommend.
It's so exciting to be able to kind of see the blueprint, is what I like to call it, of the natal chart. And
exactly.
And then I think interpreting it does take some, it takes the science, but it also takes some of the right brain energy to be interpreting the chart. Would you agree with that?
I totally would agree with that. And if you only use a left brain, which I noticed in astrology communities, there are some gentlemen, men usually, typically, trying to use astrology only with their left brain, just using calculations and mathematics. It is a valid approach, but incomplete approach. And it is a valid approach in terms of to prove to the society that astrology has a valid scientific working model, which it does, right? So the left brain approach is valid, and that's what some of the astrologers are working on. They're doing scientific research, they're doing mathematical models and studies. However, practicality of it, and if we target the best service to our customers who come for readings, the practicality of it tells you that you can get to the point faster. And I find it that using my psychic ability allows me to get to the point for my customer faster than if I'm trying to do my mathematical analysis.
Sure,
and I'm a lazy person, so I know my mathematics, but frequently I'm thinking that if I can get to the point faster, why not using that tunnel vision and just tell them what I see psychically rather than going into all the details, why I'm thinking that the Jupiter conjunct Pluto will produce possibly so-and-so based on the history. Because a lot of predictions done by left brain, they always based on the history, which is a valid scientific approach. Like, for example, a Jupiter conjunct Pluto, if you go back into history, 12 years ago produced so-and-so such and such. Therefore, my prediction that it could be something along those lines. However, if we go into the future, there are things that are being created in the future that we cannot possibly predict based on our past experiences. Like, for example, we couldn't predict the rise of social media, right, into the future based on planetary alignment because we didn't know the word social media. We could predict that something will be happening, similar to what has happened 100 years ago. But we could not predict the exact social media phenomenon because we never experienced it before. So therefore, it's useful to use your psychic ability to see at least a glimpse of a picture of what might be happening. And that's what I see psychics do when they're trying to predict the future. They create a picture, image that you can describe into the future that will create a little more accurate representation of what might be happening. Because what might be happening might not have even a name just yet for that particular stuff.
Yeah, so somebody can kind of describe the around it, so to speak, but until something has a label, you can't say, oh, there's going to be this thing called social media coming up, Oh, in fact, there's going to be something called Facebook,
Exactly. In rare cases, the prediction can have an accurate word for it, like in the sense of my story about the psychic predicting that the guy will get into prison. Prisons have been in the history of life and still exist. So he was able to say the word prison, which was accurate. But if the guy, say, for example, would become something in social media, so the psychic would have a harder time to predict that because the expressions of social media did not exist at the time.
No, and a psychic may have been able to say something like, there's going to be this thing coming up, or even like if somebody read Mark Zuckerberg, might be able to say, you're going to create this thing where people are going to be able to interact all over the, something that would describe it, but not quite have the label.
What would that be like? Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Even when internet popped into existence, when it already existed, a lot of people didn't know how to wrap their mind around it, especially if they never owned a computer. So there was a long process of adaptation of the internet by the population. So how you can already make predictions based on what's happening, but a lot of people don't even know what's happening.
Exactly.
Don't know how to wrap their mind around it.
Exactly. So and it's like I love the combination of the astrology, and I know astrology is again more complex, more involved than just the sun sign. You're talking about the planets and all that kind of stuff, and how you describe it in your books and in your presentations really does appeal to those of you out there who are kind of more right-brained, more creative, more artistic, more coming from a feeling space, and at the same time really good for the people who are more scientific and really like the concrete proof and the explanations and that kind of stuff. So, it's like you do have a beautiful balance between the left brain and the right brain. And I know for people listening, some people are very right brain energy, some people are very left brain energy. You've got explanations that really appeal to both parties. And, part of I wanted to bring in some science today is because, again, there's so many people, like you have the experience of your classmates and colleagues thinking you're ridiculous and feeling like you needed to kind of prove scientifically what was going on. And I know people, who are just developing their psychic abilities or even want to look at astrology need to find a way to explain to people who don't get it or who don't believe in it, whether they want to explain it or not. Sometimes it's not even worth explaining to somebody who's so skeptical that they're not willing to hear anything about it. So when people develop psychically, so to speak, are there physics behind that as well that somebody can explain?
Absolutely. And it comes across of my book series you can find on Amazon, number 7, that specifically talks about the physics behind psychic phenomena. It's called Quantum Entanglement and Love, and it talks about love also, how love affects psychic ability of a person. If you want to explain your psychic phenomena, what you could do, and this is my kind of advice, you could put in a search the word ESP, extrasensory perception. And this is a scientific label that attached to the psychic phenomena that have been researched upon and worked with within a scientific realm. Extrasensory perception. A lot of Russian groups work with extrasensory perception and conduct their research, beautiful research. One of the groups that sprang out from Russian form of CIA, it was the Russian secret services that used to use psychics to do remote viewing. So this group, the secret services project was dissolved, and this group, I don't remember their name, this group became a scientific research group in Russia. I watched their videos in Russian language where they explain what they do. They get very gifted psychics into the project, and where they put these gifted psychics into different settings that could be in different locations. And then they ask one psychic to, say, for example, look at the image and psychically project that image into the, say, into the universe. So the exact psychic in the other location has to grab that image and deliver it, sort of, that psychic image, and say, here's what I see, whether it could be an image, geometrical figure, or a number. With this project, with this research, this group comes to beautiful, positive results that this phenomenon exists, and they also working with explaining the science behind it. But however, the science behind it is so obvious and nobody is looking at it that I take pride and joy into expose the actual physical phenomena behind it. I didn't invent it. I just discovered it thinking about it. And
I'm glad you did, because because this is very serious work for us.
Essentially, yes, it all comes across of all of these my books, and there's one of the books specifically has a chapter that's called Planetary Mind Games, and that part also talks about how our brain works. And I do have, by the way, video presentation, Planetary Mind Games, where I talk about how the brain works. We egoistically think that we come up with our thoughts from within our brain. However, we take for granted the fact that if you put us as a human being into isolated environment where there is no incoming information whatsoever, dark room and no sound, we never put two and two together, that if we're sitting in a dark room with no sound and no information, no sensory information, no audio information, no visual information coming in, if there's no information coming in, we will have nothing to go by to make our brain work to come up with any type of output. The brain essentially is a computer that receives the information from our sensory organs, digests the information from our sensory organs, puts it into frontal lobe, but frontal lobe makes a decision how to sustain our livelihood or how to resolve certain issues, and then puts this in motion. It's fairly simple. It's a little more complex than this simple, but our brain cannot function without external information coming into our brain. And the external information coming to our brain in vibrational format. It's either we see visual spectrum, electromagnetic spectrum of the light, it's either visual format, or it's audio in terms of sound waves, sound waves, or we have infrared and we feel something with our skin, the breeze of wind, or cold and heat, or it could be smell, or it could be taste. These are all electromagnetic sensory devices that we have in our body, and that's how we receive all the information. We do have additional capacity to receive information with our pineal gland. Our pineal gland designed that we can receive a certain information while we're sleeping or in other altered states that goes outside of our five senses. This is what we call sixth sense.
Right.
It's like we are a complex antenna where we have 5 powerful radio stations. We have devices within our antenna to amplify that message, digest it and translate it into a thinking pattern, and frontal lobe to make us decide to do something. But we also have very weak radio stations that we don't really pay much attention to, but they also receive certain information.
Yeah.
But if we shut down all the 5 senses, right, all the 5 biggest radio stations that are very loud, these big radio stations are very, very loud. If we shut them down, which happens during our sleep or during our meditation, if we shut them down, then we'll be able to hear that very weak radio station. We'll be able to hear messages from there.
Absolutely, yeah.
When I had the epiphany how it all works, I got chills. That's how excited I got. So I couldn't wait to put it all on paper and start spreading this understanding. And again, it's not my invention, it's my discovery.
Right, yeah, I know, but it's so
discovery.
important, especially, you know, it's like as astrology and psychic phenomena are coming into more mainstream in our culture right now, I think it's really important that people get that there's science behind it, and it's not just, you know, foo-foo, fluffy stuff that just comes out of nowhere. I mean, it's like there's something concrete to it. I think it's really important, whether somebody understands everything you've said or not, just to know that it's there and they can get your books and they can read more. They can look ESP up on Google, which Google wasn't conceptualized many years ago either. But now we can. You know, we can look up ESP on Google and see the research that was done. And so really for anybody who's opening up to their gifts, astrology is a beautiful way to come into the understanding. And as Nadia is saying, start with the sun signs. You know, that is basic, but that is the starting point. And then go into some of the other aspects, the moon sign, the Jupiter, the Mercury, all that kind of stuff, and just learn little piece by piece and start understanding how those planets interact with one another, how they sit in a chart. And so then you can really start to open up to understanding that. And it'll help you open up your psychic energy too. And again, that sixth sense that Nadia was talking about does open up more as we, you know, sleep, as we meditate. That's why meditation is so great for us, because it shuts down our resistance, and then we start opening further to what, you know, other information.
I'd like to invite everyone to follow the links posted underneath of the video and learn more about physics of astrology from me, as well as astrology science and extrasensory perception. In particular,
I'm inviting everybody to enroll into part 1 of my webinar, Astrology, Science, and Psychic Abilities. And I'll be more than happy to explain to you how you can empower yourself with the knowledge of physics behind psychic abilities. I'm going to give tips on how to improve your psychic abilities. And I'm going to give a beginner understanding of what is your own psychic ability through your natal chart.
Very exciting, and it's like everybody has a link that they can click. So, you know, this is just we'll say an overview of the depth of the world of astrology and understanding the science, as well as all the interconnectedness to psychic energy and how we are really a liquid planet with gravitational, you know, tides and gravity and things that we are not even thinking about. Like most people are out thinking about their day-to-day, you know, what they have to do, and it's like they're not opening up. And for those people who are really interested in psychic energy and astrological energy, these are some of the things you want to become aware of. So thank you, Nadia, for being here. I so appreciate your amazing, amazing, amazing information and knowledge. And this really allows our industry to be rooted in science. And for those people who have the abilities, the natural abilities, and everybody has some kind of, like you said, a little weak voice in there, but some people are just a little more gifted. But getting into astrology is going to really open people up. And I know people have a challenge using that word psychic, but now that you understand some of the science and you can look up some of the research for ESP, you don't have to be afraid to use that word anymore, because there's science behind it. So thank you, Nadia, again, for sharing all of your wealth of information with us. I think that's fantastic. So again, everybody listening, this is Susan Ortolano with Nadia Smirnova-Mierau. Thank you. Everybody
Absolutely.
an opportunity to embrace your gifts, to expand your light, and to understand that there's science underneath it all. And I just encourage everybody to listen to the replay so that you can really grasp some of that science energy. Go to physicsofastrology.com. You can look at the books, the Physics of Astrology books that Nadia has, and learn all about the science from both a right brain and a left brain perspective. Oh my gosh, that is such a vast world of, even for some of us who are doing this work, it's like, we just do what we do. The astrology certainly, it's like, I know there's science behind it, but the psychic stuff, and it's like how to explain to somebody like how it happens, I think your information is amazing.
Thank you so much, Susan.
So I just wish everybody namaste, and we will see you next time.